don't like the Amazing Digital Circus. No, I really don't. However, there's this one part I do like, but I can see why people like this part. No, I just do not like this show, and I genuinely don't understand why so many people seem to think it's the greatest indie show ever made. But I'm not saying I hate it or that it's the worst thing I've ever seen. There is plenty, and I mean plenty of other media to fill that gap. I'm saying when it comes to the Amazing Digital Circus, I don't know what people see in this show, and I've been trying to understand what the fandom likes about it since the first episode was released. However, when I saw the last act in theaters, which was episode 8 and 9 of the show put together if you didn't know, I was so unbelievably disappointed that the second I got home, I immediately started to write this script, because all I could think was, that's it? But I'm getting ahead of myself. I should probably introduce everything before I go into it all. Hi, I'm Note, aka Nerd of All Trades, local wannabe artist trying to make it big, and the Amazing Digital Circus is... You don't need me to tell you what it is. And if you do, just please go watch the show before you watch this video. Don't let my opinions of it sway yours. The 9th episode is more than likely out on YouTube by the time this video is out, so please watch the show in full and then come back. Don't worry, I'll wait. You watched it? Good. Now, you're probably wondering, Note, how could you not like the show? That was one of the best things I've ever seen. And that'd be fair. Or maybe you're saying, you're right, that was lame as hell. And I'd 100% agree. And this entire video is going to be my personal issues with this show. Keyword there being my personal issues. Here's where I give a disclaimer. I wanted to be clear that no matter what I say about the show in this video, you all know that it's my opinion, and I'm not going to push it onto anybody or treat it as fact. It's perfectly fine if anyone watching disagrees with me, and if this video just strengthens your love for this show, then all the power to you. I don't want my thoughts on a show to make anyone feel bad for liking it. All I'm trying to do with this video is give my honest thoughts and provide my evidence for why I have those thoughts. Don't let me ruin your fun, and if I miss something super obvious about this show, then let me know. I like to discuss things even if I don't like them. So, as a show of good faith, I'm going to start with the things I actually do like about the show, because there are things I like about it, believe it or not. The animation of this show is seriously immaculate. Some of the best animation I've ever seen out of an indie studio. No, out of animation ever. I love how it shifts from looking like an old computer game to looking more and more hyper-realistic as the show goes on. Some people think that's because Pomni got more integrated into the circus as time passed, but I think the animators are just flexing their skills with every episode. Especially in an intermission scene in episode 5. You can't tell me this wasn't everyone just showing off how amazing they were at animating the show. It makes me want to learn animation faster so badly to make something half as beautiful as this. And when the show starts to add animation styles and blend them together, it gets even better. The anime segment was so cute and I loved it so much. Not to mention the music. I love the music in this show. It's so good. The songs are just phenomenal. They give so much to each scene and blend in perfectly. And there's a certain song in episode 8 that's still stuck in my head to this day, which I do not mind personally. Seriously guys, the animation and music alone makes this show worth trying out. It all just gets better and better with each episode, and you will not be disappointed with how it looks, I promise. Wait, that's it? There's seriously nothing else on the list of things I liked? No? Oh boy. Well, if I had to start with what I didn't like about the show, it'd have to be... For a show that a lot of people say is very well written, it breaks the #1 rule of storytelling more often than it should. That is, show don't tell. The amount of stuff that is straight up told to me, the audience, instead of being shown, is a lot. Whether it's a character's feelings about a situation and they're expositing their emotions to the other characters and by extension the viewer.
I don't matter in the slightest. I'm nothing. My life, my memories, my friends. It's all fake.
Every day I spend here is one nightmare after the next. I knew it would end up like this. He just wants me to suffer. I really am in hell.
Do you think Gangle is actually capable of being happy?
What?
I don't know, like her comedy mask still breaks every day. Does she think hanging out with Zubul is gonna magically fix that?
It's Jax, though. He probably wants revenge. And he's gonna make it painful.
Hey, you deserve better than thinking about him when he's not even here. You're a human. You're not his toy.
It sometimes doesn't feel that way.
Or is the underlying story being explained to me outright?
No, C&A is a real company. I worked for them.
Wait, they really made this game?
No, we didn't make games. We were just developing artificial intelligence. specifically creative AI.
I'm always being told what's going on and what people are feeling. It even happens with some of the jokes, where someone will point out a part of a joke and make it infinitely less funny.
Darn, guess you're never getting that unicorn horn, Pomni.
When did I ever say anything about that?
I think you'd look good with one.
Well, it's possible.
Did somebody say adventure?
No.
Kane, what are we doing right now?
We're intermissioning!
Why? Hello? Ming?
Did Kane just say ass?
Hi, I'm Ming, and I really don't appreciate what your assumptions have done to my reputation.
You made a whole guy for that?
And because of that, I don't find myself connecting with the characters that much because their dialogue feels so stiff. They don't feel like normal people or how they would talk. This ranges from small examples like Ragatha lifting up her bucket hat and asking what just happened after the bandits fell into the fudge canyon in episode 2, and Jack saying this is really weird after Gangle leaves in episode 4, to huge examples like Zubal's Noir Bar adventure in episode 5, where everyone literally sits down and takes turns saying what their backstory is. And put a pin in this bar scene because I'm coming back to it later. This keeps happening throughout the show. In episode 6, Jax fully explains his mindset of the circus and how he sees it. But anyone who's been paying attention to the show, which I've been doing for several days now, would know that he does all this for the shits and giggles. I can clearly see that he does this to be an intentional asshole, using this digital world to escape the reality of the situation he's in. Did I need that spelled out for me? And it's all over that same episode. Ragatha's conversation with Kinger with her saying that she thinks Pomni's seen through all her tricks and she hates her now.
You said you failed Pomni. Why do you feel that way?
I don't know. I feel like every day we're drifting further apart. Like she's seen through all my tricks and doesn't trust me anymore. Before I know it, she'll be a different person. One who doesn't even want me around.
Zubal telling Gangle to love herself because her flaws are intentional.
How are you supposed to like the part of yourself that just makes you worse than everyone else?
'Cause it exists. It's a part of you that's real. And the only you that you should care about is the real you. You have to choose to love yourself, even if it doesn't make sense. It's not natural, it's intentional.
Even Pomni's argument with Jax has him literally looking at me, telling me to stop looking for more beneath the surface.
You are my playthings, and I get joy out of making you suffer. I'm the one who causes pain for fun. If I led you on, it was just to make this part hurt you more. There's nothing more to me. So please, just stop looking.
Telling over showing is everywhere in this show, and it's incredibly frustrating to take the show seriously when it comes up so often. It feels like Gooseworx doesn't trust me to piece things together on my own and has to spell out everything so I can understand it. But I'm not that stupid. I can infer several things about the show and its characters perfectly fine. It feels like Gooseworx is trying to hold my hand, but I really don't need her to. And yeah, I'm referring to Gooseworx individually. She's the sole creator, director, and writer of the show. No other writers were a part of this show. So all the writing choices made came directly from her. This is why another issue I have with TADC's tell-don't-show method is how the dialogue is structured. Sometimes it doesn't feel natural to me at all. I find myself asking, who talks like this? And did you have to say it like that? And why didn't you ask for more? A lot. Especially during Gangle and Zubal's conversation in episode 6. I had those questions the entire time, and I felt like that entire conversation could have flowed better. However, I can understand the other side of this argument. The humans in the circus are still human at the end of the day, and sometimes humans have to drop all pretenses and just be fully open and out there with their emotions. Whether or not it's too cheesy or too unrealistic. Sometimes people are unrealistic, and that's the most realistic thing ever. While I don't necessarily agree with this sentiment, I can understand it, and I'd love to see if anyone in the comments has something to add about it. But enough pleasantries. I hope you remember to put a pin in the bar scene because it's directly related to my next major issue with the show, which is Nobody in this show talks to each other beyond what we see on screen. It's incredibly drawing once you realize that the characters' interactions only make sense if they don't interact outside of the show. One small example is Zubul asking Pomni about the adventure from episode 3 near the beginning of episode 4.
What happened last time? Was that the one made for me?
There was this awful, horrifying angel head thing. And when we tried to fight back at all, we got sent to hell where evil souls tried to infest our bodies. It was bad.
Why did you think I would like that?
Why wouldn't Zubul ask about that off screen? It wouldn't be that hard to imply that Zubul talked with the others about the adventure they went on. They were curious enough to ask in episode 4, so why didn't they ask and have us infer that they asked before episode 4? And there's multiple times this happens, by the way. It's not just this one instance. What examples? I'll tell you. You remember that pin I told you to unstick earlier? The bar scene in episode 5? It's not only one of the most egregious tell-don't-show scenes I've seen out of a show, but it's an incredibly poor way of telling these characters' backstories. I'm literally being sat down and watching the characters take turns explaining their life stories to me.
Yeah, I was an accountant for a supermarket chain.
A supermarket? How'd you end up here?
Well, I sometimes got bored of things, and I would seek out mild thrills, like exploring abandoned buildings, and posting videos of it online.
Ah, a YouTuber.
Not really. Nobody watched them. It was just something I did for me.
I worked in fast food.
You've done more than that. What about your art?
I was in community college for graphic design, but I dropped out. I didn't really pursue art much after that.
I guess I'll go now. Oh, geez, where to start? I was born into a fairly wealthy family. We had a large property with horses and chickens, and my mother, my mother was a lot. I worked in real estate for a bit until I ended up here. I'm sure she doesn't miss me. I certainly don't miss the yelling, and the braiding, and guilt-tripping, and the... Yeah, just kind of a farm girl. Nothing too out of the ordinary.
Aside from the fact that this isn't how I should be learning about the characters and the show should have taken more time to show me their lives over telling me outright, this is one of the most unrealistic scenes in the entire show. Am I seriously supposed to believe that these people who have been stuck in the circus for years don't know this stuff about each other already? Is this seriously the first time they're hearing about Gangle's job as a shift manager, or Ragatha's bad home life on a farm, or Zubul's 2 jobs as a bartender and tattoo artist? One of the first things I was told about these guys is that they've been stuck in the circus for years.
We've been stuck here for years.
And they never told each other anything about themselves? I can understand Kinger and Jax not opening up because Jax has issues and Kinger's literally crazy, but Ragatha and Zubul and Gangle never talk to each other about their lives? That's another reason I find these characters so hard to connect with. They don't feel like real people to me because of this. It's like these guys are on pause mode until the next episode starts, because they don't talk to each other at all. And it's not just talking about the past, it's the future as well. Pomni doesn't bring up Kinger's mental state in the dark at all until episode 8.
Wait, the bucket makes him sane?
Darkness. It's a long story.
Even though in episode 3 she realized why he calms down in the dark and stays in a pill fort all the time, and she asks the others if they know he has a wife, she doesn't do anything with the information of Kinger is saying when he's in the dark until episode 8. And it's not just Pomni, Ragatha does it too. She doesn't mention that Kinger can conjure butterflies in episode 6 until episode 8.
We all technically have the ability to conjure, just like Cain. It just comes naturally to him, but requires a lot more skill and concentration for us.
Butterfly.
And she doesn't mention that he's sane in the dark either. She just agrees with Pomni when in episode 8 Kinger gets a bucket on his head.
What exactly are we waiting for?
No, she's right. Just give it a bit.
Worse off, neither Pomni or Ragatha fully explain what's going on. They just tell the others to wait instead of giving a proper explanation. Why? Who knows? I certainly don't. Which all ties into my original point. It doesn't feel like the characters exist outside of the show, and it's not only hard to relate to them because of that, but it's also hard to take the show seriously because I'm constantly going, why don't you know this already? When something important like Kinger's sanity or a character's background comes up. How am I supposed to see these characters as real people if the show doesn't let them have lives outside of the show? How am I supposed to connect with the characters if their backstories and lives aren't told to me in an organic way? The way that important information about the characters is told me feels very, very clunky and weird, and I really don't like it. Speaking of clunky and weird, another thing I found super clunky and really weird was... I I've watched this show at least 3 times by now, and every single time I couldn't help but think that the actual plot didn't start to kick in until episode 7, which is, funnily enough, when I started to actually enjoy it. Now let's get one thing straight. I've heard the argument that the way the show is structured in terms of plot makes perfect sense for it. The first 3 episodes are to establish character and show how Kane's adventures work. Episodes 4 to 5 are to show that the cast actually do like each other's ideas and work best with teamwork over Kane's wackiness. With episode 6 showing Kane getting tired and just giving everyone guns while possibly working on the big adventure that appears in episode 7, where episode 8 is where everything culminates to a point in his breakdown and the chaos that ensues from it. And everything about how the show is paced makes more sense by seeing it through that lens. And I do understand and even agree quite a bit. It does make sense from that perspective. However, I personally disagree with this way of viewing the series more than I agree with it. And because of that, I'm going to explain why I think the plot is structured poorly. Is that bad? I don't think so, but you can skip this section if you think that line of logic doesn't make any sense. I took notes after I watched each episode for the second time, and for a while, all I had to say about episodes 2 to 5 was, not a lot happens. I know what you're going to say. But we learned so much about the characters in that time. Yes, we do. We learn about Zubul's body image issues.
It's me, remember? I don't like myself. I hate this body. I hate all these stupid removable pieces. I just want to find something that feels good.
Gango's shyness hiding a passion for art.
Now I know what you're thinking. I don't want a career in fast food. I want to be a comic artist and eventually launch my own manga-inspired webcomic. And it's cool to have dreams, but you also need to remember that they're completely unrealistic, and you need to stop trying.
Ragatha's cheerful attitude about everything not being completely sincere.
No offense, but you're kind of annoying when you have your happy mask. Yo, Jax. I, hate you, but I don't want you to hate me. Is that weird?
Jax being an asshole for fun.
Oh, hey, maybe I didn't leave the gate unlocked for nothing after all.
Which door should we choose?
Not sure. Let's try this out. Oh no! It looks like I've taken Ragatha and dropped her in the deep fryer. Can you believe this, Pomni? First she draws anime, now she drags us all into one. She must be one of them, losers.
You threw me out of a moving truck.
Kinger knowing more than he lets on.
I'm more worried she's having another horrible experience. She still seems really upset about what happened yesterday. I don't think she really likes me that much.
It's a lot for anybody to go through. Don't take it too personally. I remember how long it took for you to adjust.
Oh, yeah. I'm surprised you remember that.
7 years of computer science for this, huh?
And Pomni learning all about this as we do. But what actually happens in these episodes? What do the characters do? How do the characters progress the story? How do they move things along at a steady pace? The way I see it, they don't, because there is no plot or story to advance until episode 7. I learn about these characters and their problems and what makes them tick, but none of it actually matters when the story kicks in at episode 7 when they realize that the way out was an adventure constructed by Kane. And look, I can understand that not every show needs to have an overarching plot or deep lore to be compelling. Character-focused slice of life shows where the characters or the plot exist. I am well aware of that, but I hesitate to drop this show into that category. With how sudden episode 7 drops the ball with the massive story drops at the end, it makes me think I'm supposed to see it as a slice of life with hints of a bigger story sprinkled throughout. But that's not what I saw or interpreted from this show on my many rewatches of it. The way I see it, the show is more focused on laughing at theorists for looking too deeply at the red herrings that didn't matter than giving us satisfying answers for the few that did. Episode 7 was the most obvious your theories about Kane and Abel were wrong message I've ever seen, but continuing on, including episode 9, it didn't feel like there was an underlying story that was always being hinted to. Kinger literally had to sit down and explain the CNA company's past to the cast because there was no hint or indication of them developing creative AI in the show in any way. This is my issue with the plot of the show. It clearly wanted to have a plot element where the clues theorists saw were a red herring, but it's like Gooseworx forgot to add the actual clues to the story she wanted to tell. Slice of life stories where it's character driven are fine, but if you're going to add an actual plot, you need those actual clues alongside the red herrings. The hints we think we see of a bigger story going on don't actually mean anything, and apparently have never meant anything. It was just theory bait. Okay? Haha, some theorists look into a blurred out poster that appears in the background for 5 seconds way too seriously. You know there still needs to be an actual story to tell, right, Gooseworx? Do you have anything to say about the story besides, haha, it was all theory bait? If a message Gooseworx wanted to have in her show is theorists look way into the smallest details over the super obvious hints that's right in front of them on screen, I'd totally be on board with that. Because let's be for real, some theorists do that. A lot. But it felt like she just wanted to laugh at the people who got invested in her show and then forgot to add in the story that people were looking for. If this show was a slice of life through and through, I wouldn't have made this section. I don't even think I'd be making this video. But by sprinkling in these hints of something bigger going on over and over again, and basically telling the community that it meant nothing in the end, Gooseworx is the one who built a narrative of something bigger going on that never was. You can't do a massive bait and switch without the switch, because at that point I just got baited for 7 episodes. Wait a second, note, what do you mean Gooseworx sprinkled hints of something bigger happening over and over again? Oh, strawman for the viewer, I didn't tell you about the amount of times this show has an interesting idea and then fully drops it? Well, why don't I do that in our new game I decided to make up on the spot called... Welcome to our game show I made up on a whim, Sound Off, where I count off every single time an interesting plot point is dropped in a show I'm reviewing. This time is the Amazing Digital Circus, and oh boy, it is way more than I thought it'd be. Keep in mind, I've watched this show all the way through to episode 9, aka the end of the show, so when I say a plot point is dropped, I'm not saying there's more show left and it hasn't been explored yet. I mean it was dropped and never brought up again at all by the end of the show. So let's sound off! It's never explained why Kane chose a children's computer game themed around a circus as his main setting. Kane making the cast forget their names upon entering the circus is never explained. The black sludge that Pomni pukes up twice, that Gummingoo pukes up once, that the barrel monkey is made of, and the abstracted creatures are made of is never elaborated on or shown again beyond episode 2. When characters are harmed in future episodes, it's not black sludge, just normal cartoon violence. How the computer still running the Digital Circus game at the end of the pilot is never explained or elaborated on, even though it's possibly the most important question in the entire series. Kane implying he once lost track of who was a human and who was an NPC was never explained, elaborated on, and went nowhere. We never know what happens when Jax holds his breath. We don't know why Kane thinks making adventures is what he's meant to do when he was originally made as creative AI for CNA. We never find out why darkness makes Kinger sane or why light makes him insane. Kane calling himself a god is only brought up in episode 2 and 8, and is never explained why he does so or where he got the idea to do that. Kane's beef with Kinger, which was revealed through Abel, is never explained. Kane adding modifiers to human minds, possibly causing abstraction, is never explained or elaborated on. It's never explained why Kinger was able to say something completely sane and total light in front of Kane. Scratch being the one to lay foundations for what made Kane and having abstract ideas that might have been because of a tumor in his head is a very deliberate choice of language and it leads nowhere, is not expanded upon in any way. Kane saying humans aren't relatable and then calling Pomni, the new human, relatable also goes nowhere and means nothing. The question mark AI in the console means nothing at all. Pomni getting used to the circus being super quick is pointed out by Kinger, but goes nowhere by the end of the episode. Kane going to the void when he was deleted doesn't explain what the void is or why he wasn't properly deleted. And at the end of the story, we still don't know what the hell happens to the computer keeping everyone alive. And that was Sound Off. Thanks for coming, folks. But, seriously, this is a lot more than I expected. I'm not nitpicking these points in any way. You can go watch the episodes yourself. Everything I said is true. Everything I said is never elaborated on, or explored, or given a hint of an answer by the time the show is over. Especially the stuff with Kinger. I thought it turned out that Kane did something to him to keep him in check. But nope, he just went insane at some point and we never find out why. I know it must sound odd to complain about not getting direct answers to my questions when I was literally complaining about Gooseworx telling and not showing me the story, but I'm not complaining about having indirect answers. Not having all the answers to my questions is fun, and I like theorizing over the possibilities of what could have been or what could be the answers as much as the next person. No, I'm complaining about how this meant nothing in the end. Nothing I listed actually went anywhere by the end of the story. All of it was red herrings to trick the viewer, some of which were in the final episode. Why am I being baited in the finale? So many of these things were genuinely interesting to potentially explore, like all of the characters being black sludge underneath, or why Kane chose a circus-themed children's game of all things as his playground. But the show never does that. Gooseworx never does that. And I keep bringing up Gooseworx because I must remind you, she's the sole director and writer of this show. It's in the credits of every episode. She's the one who decided to drop all of these red herrings, and she's the one who chose to not add an actual story to go along with them. I want to try and find a bright side to this side of the argument, but I genuinely can't. I see no reason to add in all these hints and do nothing with them other than to be mean and laugh at the theorists who are passionate about your show, which did not have an actual story at the end of the day. If the only reason these hints and clues to a story that didn't exist were added was to say, theorists look too deeply into things and they have to realize that not everything is that deep, did that message have to come across in this incredibly interesting premise? It just feels like a waste to me. I guess I could say that it's just a me issue, and I'm mad at the show for not being a story I made up in my head, but I really don't think I am. I'm looking at the clues the show pointed out, and I'm confused and disappointed that they went nowhere. I'm not asking for the show to follow my headcanons, I'm asking for the show to use the obvious clues it was laying down, or the ones crazy theorists obsess over. I don't see how that's too much to ask. Do let me know what you guys think on this one. I'm not trying to sound like one of those fans who say the show is bad because it didn't match the fanfic they made up. I'm just really disappointed with how it's structured, and I think Gooseworx could have done better with handling the writing. Speaking of things Gooseworx could have handled better, I can't not talk about... If I had to rank characters by how much they develop in this show, I'd put Jax at the top. It's not even close. He's definitely the one who gets the most focus. To the point that I think is to the detriment of the other characters. He's the one who gets the most screen time, the most spotlight, and the most payoff to his character arc. In a show that's supposedly character focused, putting the spotlight on only Jax's development isn't how this should have been done. What do I mean? I'm glad you asked. Jax is the only character who we start to see hints of something more to his typical character stereotype. In episode 4, the fast food Avenger and Gangle's shift manager antics start to get to Jax, as any retail environment would. Jax can't keep up his funny guy persona any longer because in this setting, there's no point. Now, it is true that in the same episode we see Gangle's insecurities in her attempt at masking her feelings, as well as Ragatha saying her honest feelings about the others while she's super high. But I can't really see it like that because these two characters get so little compared to everything that Jax gets. They're overshadowed by him in sheer scope. I find what Ragatha and Gangle have to be very loose at best. In episode 5, which is apparently supposed to be Ragatha's episode, I find myself spending more time and learning more about Jax than Ragatha. We learn about Jax's aversion to corn, Jax's confusion about Kane making him a vegan, Jax's fear over Kane manipulating his mind. We learn that Jax used to have an actual friend in the circus and wasn't a jerk all the time for Pete's sake. And we learn that last one because of Ragatha. What do we learn about Ragatha in her focus episode? That she has issues with her mom. Okay. And what else do we learn about her? What does she do besides being an accessory for Jax? I know that sounds harsh, but everything she does in her supposed focus episode is either because of Jax or caused by Jax. Even when she finally has enough of Jax and finally yells at him for rightfully being a jackass all the time, she's told to calm down, as if she wasn't directly told by the person telling her to relax that it was okay to be a jerk sometimes. And Gangle? Where is she? Apparently this is Jax's episode, not hers. One of Gangle's biggest moments in episode 5 is getting picked on by Jax. Again. Seriously, if you watch through this entire series and you take a shot every single time Jax bullies Gangle, you'll be dead on the floor. This pattern of Jax having more to him compared to other characters continues in every episode after the fact. Episode 6 blatantly tells us his issues in his argument with Pomni. Episode 7 shows us his flashbacks to his old life. And even though episode 8 is more of a team effort, it's Jax who has the panic attack over everything being real, and Jax whose emotions were followed up with throughout the series in a major way by episode 9. While Jax isn't the only character to go through character development, I will say Jax is the only character whose development actually means something in the end. There are so many times that Jax should have just taken a step back to allow the other characters to shine through, but he literally never does. He gets most of the attention put onto him. I have even more to say about him in the section about the last episode of the show. Spoiler alert, none of it is good. But that's for later. And believe it or not, there are other characters in the show, and as little as it is, they do get something. Next up on the ranking in terms of character development, I put Gangle and Zooble. Gangle is very shy and nervous at the beginning of the show, her comedy mask always breaking and going along with what Jax says to get him to stop harassing her, to little success. And Zooble's tough exterior hides the fact that they have severe dysphoria about their body and are really insecure about it, and have been trying to find body parts that they like since they got in the circus, which might have been years at that point. They're both dealing with a lot of problems, and it's clear that they can't solve those issues on their own. And they don't. In episode 4, Zooble reaches out to Gangle to give her a new mask to try out. I found it really sweet, and I found their follow-up talk after the adventure even better. Gangle realizing that she can reach out to Zooble as a friend, and Zooble finding friendship in Gangle is honestly really cool. And this continues on into future episodes. Zooble telling Gangle that her anime suggestion is fine, Gangle and Zooble starting to vote to put Jax in a maid outfit and laughing about it, their one-on-one in episode 6 where they bond over their avatar gimmicks. They continue to be friends as the episodes go on, and it's awesome. What else is awesome is how they both improve each other other in small ways. Because of Zubul standing up for her, Gangle gains more confidence to stand up to Jax in episode 6 by refusing to be on a team with him. And because of Gangle's kind personality, Zubul learns to be more open with the others like Pomni and Rakatha. Well, except Jax, but that's understandable. The two of them improve each other for the better, and it's really cool to see subtly play out as the episodes go on. And it makes me confused why we couldn't see this for other characters. I'm getting ahead of myself there. My point is, Zubul and Gangle are awesome even if they were overshadowed by Jax. The next character I'd say who got super far in terms of character development is Rakatha. And I'll be real, that's not saying much. I thought people were doing a classic internet thing of not focusing on the female characters in the show, and then saying the show doesn't focus on the characters for it, but I've watched the show several times over by now. And Rakatha doesn't really get anything to do until episode 5. She's super prominent in episode 1, yes, but she's a side character in episode 2, barely in episode 3, spends all of episode 4 high off her ass, and her big moments in episode 5 only happen because Jax is being a dick as he always is.
Oh, remember when you got high at McDonald's and told Gangle to kill herself? Now that was funny.
What? I did not say that. I think. No, of course I didn't. And I am still so sorry about that, Gangle. I would never have said anything like that if I didn't get that stupid sauce in my eye.
Sure, from episode 5 onward, we see more of her and learn more about her, and she learns to accept herself after a patented dad talk with Kinger. But what does she actually do? I couldn't tell you. What I can tell you is that her crash out in episode 5 is 100% justified, and I can't believe so many people thought Rakatha was in the wrong here. Rakatha did nothing wrong, Jax 100% deserved to get called out for being an asshole. One good thing this moment and episode does is let Rakatha be angry for once, and actually let loose in her own way. She's obviously been holding in these feelings about Jax for years, and being able to finally let them out is good for her, and it was refreshing to see. Which leads me to episode 6 and her conversation with Kinger. I know a character flaw of Rakatha's is that she isn't always completely sincere and she hides her true feelings, but she does that because she wants everyone to be happy, which, in all honesty, is very reasonable. This woman is trapped in the equivalent of digital hell with a crazy ringmaster torturing them all the time. The last thing she needs is everyone at each other's throats 1 second away from abstracting. Rakatha is trying to keep everyone together in her own way, but she's overcorrecting and pushes people away by trying too hard. I think her conversation with Kinger taught her that she can be more open and honest with the people around her, and as long as she's there for her friends, she's doing all she can. As hand-fisted as the conversation felt, that's definitely what she needed to hear at that moment. Speaking of Kinger, I hate to say it, but I don't think he really goes through a lot of character development. Yeah, we learn more about him and his backstory and what he meant to the circus, but at the start of the series, he was a crazy guy who could be sane in the dark. And at the end of the series, he's still a crazy guy who's sane in the dark. Kinger doesn't really change a lot as a person or a character by the time the series ends. However, even though I don't really like it, I can understand why he didn't change a lot, considering his role in the story as one of the creators of Kane, and being shrouded in a lot of mystery because of that. Also, Dad Kinger for the win. You know who I didn't see coming in terms of low character development and who's at the bottom of my list of those who got it? Pomni, the main character. In fact, I go as far as to say she barely changes as a person over the course of the series at all. I know that's a very bold claim, but when I look at her actions and her mindset in the show, as it's shown and told to me, I can't help but come to that conclusion. And episode 9 just cements that idea in my head. Now, I admit this is probably a bad faith interpretation on my part. I've tried to see this through a positive angle instead of being mean about it. And that new angle is that Pomni starts the series as an anxious jester who just wants to leave the circus. And Pomni ends the series accepting the circus and her new friends and living the best life she can. However, just like the plot section I brought up earlier, I disagree with this positive interpretation way more than I agree with my negative one. And since it's my video, I'm going to go with the one I agree with the most, and that's a negative one. Sorry. It feels like Pomni spends most of her big moments in the show comforting other characters or being comforted by the other characters and nothing else. Pomni doesn't feel like a character. She feels like a teddy bear for the other characters to hug whenever they're feeling sad. Uplifting Gummy Goo beneath the map, getting a dad talk from Kinger in Hell, trying to talk with Gangle outside the restaurant and then telling Gangle that she can close up for her instead of letting Gangle do it. And worse yet, Pomni telling Rakatha to calm down when she blows up at Jax, even though it was Pomni who told Rakatha that it was okay to be a jerk sometimes. All of Pomni's biggest character moments for the longest time aren't about her, or developing her as a character in person. It's about uplifting everyone else around her and making them feel better. The only time she starts to get any sort of agency is in episode 6, and even then it's not that great to me. The first time I watched it, I remember thinking that Pomni had a lot of development in the episode, and she finally stopped being a vehicle for other characters to be comforted by, or to be comforted in a sense. But the only reason she started to let loose in the first place was because of Jax, whose sole motivation generally seemed to be to push his idea of nothing being real onto Pomni and make her think like he does. I can understand that this episode is still good for Pomni because she finally decided to be herself and just be free for a bit, and her fight with Jax was her way of trying to understand him and his point of view, and why he just did a complete 180 after the day of fun they had together. I understand and honestly agree with the opposing argument, I really do. I just can't help but also agree with my initial stance, that she felt like a teddy bear to squeeze in this episode once again, but this time the one holding the teddy bear stomped on it and threw it against the wall for good measure. I agree with two statements that contradict themselves. Is that alright? The main thing that episode 6 did well was introduce Pomni's agency and independence, which culminates in episode 8. She's the first one to take a proper stance against Kane, and she's the first one to call him out. Episodes 7 and 8 are the only times in the series I feel like she's not being used as an emotional crutch for the other characters, and it's really good how she gets the character development I've been wanting from her for ages. Wait, no, you said that Pomni's at the bottom of the list of characters who got development, and now you're saying she got a lot in episodes 6 to 8? And what about Kane? You didn't bring him up at all. Right you are, dear strawman for the viewer. Right you are. There's a reason for that. A reason I've been putting off this whole video. The reason why Pomni is at the bottom of the list for character development. Why I think Jax gets too much screen time and should have been established as the obvious main character from the start. Why Kane isn't even on this list. And why I think The Amazing Digital Circus is a poorly written show. And that reason is called The Amazing Digital Circus Episode 9. Which title is unrevealed as I'm scripting this, so bear with me. Episode 9 of The Amazing Digital Circus is everything I find wrong with the series wrapped up in a single episode, and what I've been saving all my rant budget for. This episode is why I don't like the show and why I will never, and I mean never, understand why so many people found the show so appealing. I'm going to go in order of the things I have the least to say about, because while I am equally infuriated by everything in this section, I have more to say about some things than others. Fair warning, this section is a bit more unhinged than the other ones. First things first. Plot holes. I know, CinemaSins ass section, but genuinely, this finale raises questions about the rest of the show that makes zero sense. My first question being, how the heck did Gangle end up in the circus if she was in the hospital after getting run over by a truck? It couldn't have been before she got in the accident, otherwise the truck hallucination she had would be depicting future events, and last I checked, nobody in this show is psychic. And it was told to us by Pomni that the computer holding the circus game is in an abandoned building, so unless the doctors at the hospital Gangle was in were unethical as hell, it couldn't have been during her hospital stay either. And before anyone even considers typing it out, no, the hospital staff did not scan Gangle's brain with the headset from the CNA computer to try and save her life or see what was going on up there, ignoring the fact that a hospital already has brain scanning technology in the form of MRI machines. The idea that any reputable hospital would do this is not only idiotic, but will also turn a small plot hole into a plot canyon with how ridiculous it sounds. This question goes for the rest of the characters, because in order for everyone to be in the circus, it assumes a lot about the circumstances of how they came to be in around the same place at around the same time, which is way too much convenience for me to just ignore. Another plot point that is rather small but I can't push past, how did an old 90s computer in an abandoned building get 2017 Wi-Fi? I don't know if you can tell by my voice, but I was born after 9/11, so maybe I'm not the most qualified person to talk about this, but even if this was a modern computer or phone, you're not getting cell service in the middle of nowhere no matter how hard you try. I don't see how a computer that's older than I am could possibly do that. But I will concede that complaining about small to medium-sized plot holes is a bit of a nitpick on my end. As much as they annoy me, they're not going to completely make or break the show for some people. You want to know what isn't a nitpick? Dropped storylines. Remember that sound-off game I made up earlier? It wasn't just a bit. Everything I listed doesn't get any hint of an answer in this episode, even though a lot of them 100% should have by now. How the computer running the circus game is being powered, what happened to the CNA company, why Kane is the way he is with his passion for adventures, we never get any answers to these questions. And while it is true that not all questions need answers, or even clear explanations, to have the audacity to introduce these interesting plot elements and then do absolutely nothing with them by the time the show is finished is absolutely criminal to me. What was the point of introducing something as interesting as Kane, an AI, thinks his function is wildly different from what he was originally made to do? The amount of things that are set up and given no payoff is just so stupid to me. Oh, but there's something about Kane that's given set up and payoff later on. His glitches and freakouts and hatred of humanity that grew in episode 8 is because of the Blue Dot AI. Wow, you're right, strawman for the viewer. That is something that was set up and paid off. Too bad it fucking sucked and makes zero sense if you think about it for more than a few seconds. In episode 8, it was very clear that Kane was the faulty AI locked away by humans. Kane is the one who has to crash out over humans not appreciating him. It's Kane who freaks out over the possibility that he's not good at adventures. And it's Kane that has a god complex. So why am I being shown and told in episode 9 that the cause of all these issues is because of the blue dot? When Kane finishes looking through all the cast's lives online after being deleted, he realizes what he's done wrong and why they deleted him in the first place. He proceeds to have an argument with the blue dot that he consumed at the beginning of his life, with his constant glitching and evil voice clearly being the blue dot's word showing through. But that makes no sense. The blue dot was the one who was seen as a better AI. Kane was the defunct one who was locked away. Why is this AI the one with such an intense grudge for humanity, when it was technically never wronged by humanity? And those are clearly the blue dot's feelings, because when Kane yanks him out of his teeth head thing, he doesn't glitch out or go on a tirade of hating humans for the rest of the episode. Oh, what was that? Kane just pulled the blue dot AI from his head like it was nothing? And now he's not hateful of humanity anymore and he's chill again? Are you serious? Am I supposed to read this as the blue dot being the reason for Kane's instability the entire series? The circus glitching out, Kane's freakouts, his god complex, his increasing frustrations with humanity? Am I supposed to believe that all of that was because of the blue dot? Not because the computer the circus is on is super old and possibly breaking down. Not because he's actually sentient and he doesn't know it and he can't deal with the human emotions he doesn't understand he has. Not because he's an AI who doesn't understand his orders and he takes his instructions the entirely wrong way. No, none of that was the case. All of his issues, all of Kane's personal problems, were because of a blue dot that he could have pulled out of his head at any time. This not only kills all attention for his character by putting all the blame of his actions on something that was easily thrown away, but it's also why I didn't add Kane to the list of characters who get developed. None of his development is actually earned in a substantial way, and the number one cause of his issues is literally tossed aside by the end. All of Kane's flaws, all of his mistakes, and how he deals with them are because of someone else we don't even get to spend time with or get to know, and is thrown away when they're finished serving their purpose for the narrative. I can't include Kane on the list of characters who changed throughout the story, because what changed about him was all because of a third party that never actually mattered to the story as a whole. Kane is still Kane at the end of it all, and I think if the development of an important character hinges on another that doesn't exist until the last episode, I can't really call that character development. You want to know who else I say didn't get a lot of character development? Pomni, which is such a disservice because I thought she did so well in the last 2 episodes, but in episode 9 it just felt like she was trying to see who she could comfort the most. Her entire runtime in this episode is spent comforting other characters or being exposited to for the audience's sake, which is insane because she spent episode 8, 7, and even most of 6 doing the exact opposite of that. She comforts Ragatha and the others when Kane is deleted, gets another dad talk with Kinger when everyone is in shock, comforts Ragatha again by telling her she's her closest friend, somehow, and then goes out to find an abstracted Jax to not only comfort and uplift him, but also get his entire backstory shown to her, and by extension the audience, for the next 15 to 20 minutes of this hour-long episode. Oh, and don't worry, I'll get back to Jax. Just you wait. All the problems I had with Pomni's character that were slowly waning with each episode comes back full force for no reason in this finale. Gone is the Pomni who wants to do things for herself and doesn't let others dictate what she wants. She's just a shoulder for everyone to cry on again because apparently she just wanted to help people this whole time.
I really wanted to help.
You had a good start.
I thought I could uplift everyone, but everything's gotten so bad.
Not actually live for herself. Even though the last 3 episodes clearly had her not wanting to do that all the time, here she just throws that out the window. It's not only frustrating, but incredibly unsatisfying. She finally allowed herself to be more than a teddy bear for others to hug and squeeze, but even now at the end of the series, she's nothing but that. Why is Pomni's only motivation and driving force is wanting to make other people feel better and make other people happy, only to feel sick of it sometimes and want to let loose occasionally? Isn't that literally what Ragatha's story is about? Why is this happening twice? Poorly, might I add. Which is insane. If you're going to have 2 characters with very similar stories, you can at least try and do something different with both of them. I seriously hate that Pomni's big moment in this episode was literally throwing herself at Jax trying to comfort him, even though it was her idea to try and initially contain him to begin with.
I suppose we should try coming up with a plan to keep him contained.
Did she seriously think that just hugging it out would work? Did she stop to ask anyone else if that had worked before? Considering how the show doesn't exist outside of what we see of it, I doubt it. Pomni spends nearly all of her runtime in this episode being a vehicle to uplift other characters, but mainly Jax. She's the one who suggests to contain Jax, and then goes after him on her own to do another hug session like that will fix anything. And the worst part is, it actually kind of does. It genuinely seems like the few episodes where Pomni showed any kind of agency were the outliers, and not the start of a new norm. I feel like Pomni has been dealt such a bad hand this entire show, because all she does is comfort others and be a stress toy the entire time. For someone who's supposed to be the main character, she doesn't get developed at all, and she's done so unbelievably dirty. But she's not the only thing in this episode that's done dirty. The second biggest example of that has to be how we learn about the characters' human selves. Not only are the characters, and by extension me the viewer, literally sat down and explicitly told the humans' current lives and how they're doing now, but the characters don't have any reaction beyond happiness and mild surprise. This is probably the most egregious examples of television show in this entire series, and the moment suffers for it. I'm going to be honest, this feels like it was shut in here for fan service. The fandom has been wanting to know what happened to the human versions of the characters since the show came out, and now we're just explicitly told that everything is fine and everyone got their happily ever after in their own way? Including Jax, the one who had the most messed up life? Including Kinger, the one who made the circus and probably knows about the AI he helped make? Grant wasn't curious about what happened to the brain scans he left behind? Seriously? We already had Kane looking through the characters' social media, and we saw enough from their posts to be able to make guesses and theorize on what they could have been like. We could have had a scene where Kane actually does offer to tell them, and we could have had a short time skip to after the fact where they have a conversation about what they learned. The cast could hint and imply about what we saw in the social media post, and we could piece things together about their past ourselves. We don't need to be sat down and told exactly what happened to their human selves. This is supposed to be a show for adults. Adults don't need their hand held this much. Just having Pomni say something as simple as, "At least he found some happiness out there," will give us some indication that Jax actually did have a good life despite all of his problems in the circus. Also, maybe this is just a me thing, but I found the cast's reactions to finding out their human selves were actually doing fine to be completely unrealistic. I feel like Gummy Goo had a more intense reaction to finding out reality as he knew it was completely shattered. I'm sorry, but if I got stuck in a digital hell of a circus game ran by an insane ringmaster for years of my life, and I learned that I was a brain scan of my human self who actually went on to have an incredible life after I got trapped in said hellscape, I'd probably abstract on the spot. What an unrealistic reaction from Pomni to just go, "Abigail is out there living her best life and I'm in here doing the same." No, why is nobody freaking out about this? Why isn't Care, who just learned he has children on the outside, freaking out about this? This is just so poorly done on so many levels. But fuck it, whoever heard of subtlety? We need to shove it as much exposition and story as possible before the show ends because we gave all the screen time to Jax. If I had to talk about the character that was done dirty by this show, it would be Jax, because by the end, all the things that the show is building up for him are completely destroyed. He gets no payoff, no chance of becoming a better person, and by the time the episode is over, I feel like I was told to feel bad for Jax and love him because he had a sad life. And nothing enforces this more than Jax abstracting off screen around 10 minutes into the episode. When I saw this, I felt like I was slapped in the face. It felt like a bad joke. Jax's abstraction and downfall as a character has been built up since episode 6 and hinted at since episode 4. It almost happened to him in episode 7. And now, after all that build-up, it happens off-screen? Was it seriously that hard to animate what someone abstracting would look like? Why not finish that trip-out sequence from episode 7 and show what it looks like when someone finishes abstracting from Jax's point of view? Or show what others see when someone starts to abstract? Having Jax abstract off-screen isn't just a bad end to his character arc either. It's a terrible look on everyone else in the circus. In episode 8, just one episode prior, everyone said that they wouldn't let him go off somewhere and abstract, and they support him, and they were all in this together. And now in episode 9, he does the very thing they said they wouldn't let him go do? Did everyone forget what they promised each other last episode? Was Jax seriously not important enough to make everyone try harder? Or do these guys seriously not interact with each other outside of the show? Because I'm starting to wonder if it's all of these things. But we see Jax willfully ignore the others and try to reach out to Pomni before changing his mind. Maybe the others did reach out, but he just ignored them because of his issues. And that's just how people work. Great argument, Strawman. You want to know what else people do? They do their best to be there for each other when everything around them has gone downhill, and they don't willingly let the mentally unstable person who they acknowledge might abstract wander off on their own all the time. Jax shouldn't have been isolated so much, and if the others genuinely cared about Jax as much as they say they do, they would have done more for him. Just because a character's actions are realistic doesn't mean they're automatically well written, and people need to start realizing that the two don't always go hand in hand. And Jax's isolation and neglect at the head to the other characters makes this episode even weirder because of how much is focused on Jax. Around 15 to 20 minutes of this hour-long episode is dedicated to not just telling his backstory, but also having Pomni comforting him in the abstracted void. While it was cool to finally see Ribbit, she didn't really feel like a character to me. She was just there to give angst to Jax, and Cosmo barely did anything in the flashbacks. Was he even necessary? Through these flashbacks, it feels like both Ribbit and Cosmo were there just to give context for Jax and to prop up Jax. They don't feel like actual characters to me, they just feel like accessories to Jax. And that's how all of these characters feel to me in this episode. All of them, especially Pomni, come together to just revolve around Jax in the end. Gangle's biggest moment in this episode is feeling conflicted over the fact that she's crying for Jax, and I'm over here wondering why I'm supposed to feel bad that Gangle can't cry for the guy who abused her the entire show and for years beforehand. No shit, she shouldn't cry for Jax. Why would she? I don't think she wanted Jax to abstract, more like she's just not upset her abuser is gone, as she shouldn't be. Why is this being treated as some big defining moment for her when it's honestly a bit insulting that she's expected to feel sympathy for the person who's hurt her so badly? Because he has mommy issues and mental problems? So? And this is my major problem with Jax the character and the show in general. It might seem like Pomni is the main character, but really it's Jax. Jax gets the most setup and payoff. Jax gets the most screen time. Jax gets the most character development. And all of the characters pretty much revolve around him in some way. Whether it's Pomni giving him comfort or Gangle being used as a tool for him to pick on, almost all of the characters exist to prop up Jax. And when they're not being used to prop up Jax, they barely get any character development, if any at all. If Jax was established and shown to be the main character since the beginning, I wouldn't have all these complaints, but he wasn't. Pomni was always the one who was the main focus. She is who we see in the first teaser and who we follow for the first 3 episodes of the show. She was clearly established to be the main character early on, so the slow shift into making Jax the main character is so odd because even though someone else is the focus, that doesn't mean everyone else can't get development. Like Gooseworx, you can have a main character get developed and still develop the side characters alongside them, right? This show doesn't feel like the Amazing Digital Circus, a character-driven show where the characters develop with each episode. It feels like the Jax show, with some extra characters that exist sometimes. And considering that Jax spends almost all of his runtime bullying everyone around him and being a total jerk, I can't really connect to him or the other characters with how minimal of a part they play in the story. Oh, come on, Note. Jax has a ton of mental problems that you wrote off as mommy issues. Didn't you see all the symbolism in episode 9 hinting at Jax possibly being trans? Sounds like you're just mad that a character with mental issues actually acts like he has mental issues to me. Thank you, straw man. And yes, it's about time I brought up the trans flag colored elephant in the room. I initially thought I was just bothered for no reason too. I thought I was falling to the mob mentality of the fandom and I didn't want to cave. But these feelings grew with each episode and reached a climax in episode 9, and I knew my emotions didn't come from nowhere. I finally figured out what had me bothered so much. However, I need to give a very big disclaimer. I am well aware of the fact that Gooseworx is a trans woman, and I could tell from this finale that it's heavily implied that Jax himself might be trans in some way too. However, I am also trans, being a trans man. Despite that fact, I only think that means my voice should be heard when it comes to how Jax is written around his gender and identity. I do not think that means that Gooseworx's identity as a trans woman should be looked down on, or viewed differently, or treated differently in any way. This is my personal interpretation of her work as a trans man. I'm the one seeing her work this way, and I'm not claiming that Gooseworx is the one giving off a specific message or agenda in her writing. All I'm going to do is give my personal interpretation of the work she made. And if you're going to judge anyone for how I interpreted Jax's gender storyline, then it should be me, not Gooseworx. Okay? Good. With that out of the way, I think the way the finale frames Jax's story by just dumping it all to me in one go and then having another flashback sequence through the entire show to a song that literally beats me over the head with the fact that he's trans was a mad scramble to get me to feel bad for Jax after non-stop episodes of him being the worst. As if seeing how sad his life was and how he feels about ruining it would make me feel bad for him. And it's just, no, I don't feel bad for him, and I'm shocked that I feel like I have to be. I know this might sound victim blamey, but I don't care. Having a tragic backstory and a sad life doesn't mean you can be a fucking prick to everyone around you and expect all of them to still be there when you need them. Jax's actions are realistic of a person with mental problems, yes, but what isn't realistic is everyone pushing aside the fact that he's been a massive jackass to everyone for months to years on end every single day because, well, he's abstracted. Even though we said we look out for him, nothing we can do, so we should just move on and forget all the bad things he did and uplift him. Screw our feelings. I had this exact same problem in episode 8 when Gangle brought up to Zooble that they just had to be there for each other. I understand that what she meant was that arguing about the past does nothing and going in circles wouldn't help them at all, but Zooble was completely right. To everyone in that room, Jax freaked out and took away their one chance at escape. To the cast, his selfishness and personal issues could have cost them everything. Why is Zooble told to stand down and just move on as if this isn't a legitimate thing to be mad about? I know that holding a grudge isn't healthy, but Zooble can still be mad about Jax ruining what they thought was a chance at freedom and not want him to abstract. You know that two contradictory feelings can exist at the same time, right, Gooseworx? Everything about Jax in episode 9 made me so upset about his character. He never gets a chance to reconcile with the others. The other characters neglect him despite saying they wouldn't in the previous episode, and there's no closure for Jax or his relationship with the others in the circus. All he gets is a talk in the void with Pomni, and even then he never actually apologizes for his shitty behavior. It's just this talk about how Jax feels bad about his life. Jax having a chance to reconcile with the others and admit what he did was wrong, and actually apologizing to everyone for his shitty behavior would have been a lot better than just putting him in a giant tent because everyone failed their promise to be there for each other. For the character with the most focus, I expected a better end to his character arc than this. And speaking of I expected a better ending than that, I have to bring up the one that made me go. I always have a soft spot for endings, as they usually tie up the loose details and give us answers to the questions we've been asking. And since episode 8 had so many callbacks to the first episode with Pomni going through the CNA offices one more time, I fully expected another callback to the ending of the pilot with the finale. And we do get that. We have a final dinner scene just like the pilot, with Kane replacing Jax to show how things are different now. The camera pans around the table as it literally goes full circle to land back on Pomni, the one who started this all. Then the camera starts to zoom out just like it did in the pilot. First to zoom out to the section of the circus where everyone is eating, then to the new circus tent where everyone lives and has now made peace with themselves, then to the game world of the circus being the lone thing in the void, and then, of course, the computer in the office. Wait. Where's the computer in the office? Where's the computer keeping the cast alive? Why am I just seeing Pomni waving at the camera? Where's the computer showing at the end of the pilot? That can't be it, can it? No? Nothing about the computer? There's just a hint that the human versions of the cast actually meet up at some point and might possibly become friends? Are you kidding me right now? This show has the audacity to end on the most obvious callback to the end of the pilot, and it has the gall to leave out the most important part of the callback, the computer keeping everyone alive. We don't get to find out what happens to the most important thing in the entire series? This is why I kept bringing this up this entire video. This is entirely a me issue, but this just bothered me so much. If you're not going to commit to the most important part of the callback from the pilot, then don't even do the callback. Don't give me a half-hearted wave that means nothing. Finish the callback to your show. I do not understand the decision to not show the computer and end the show full circle like the dinner scene. It's such a wasted opportunity to me. Not only does the answer to the question of what happened to the computer never get solved, but the way it ends is so narratively unsatisfying to me because it's not a proper full circle moment. I know I sound harsh right now, but I don't care. It's how I feel. I knew I should have listened to my instincts that told me to stop watching at episode 2. Wait a second, note. If you wanted to stop watching the show by episode 2, why didn't you? If you don't like something, just don't watch it. What, do you hate fun now? Thank you for that, straw man. And no, I don't hate fun. Quite the opposite. I kept watching and trying to engage with this show for a completely different reason. And that reason is actually why I made this video. This might shock you guys, but at first I really did like this show. I was hooked on episode 1, and I was invested all the way back in 2023. I thought the intrigue the first episode set up was amazing, and I was super excited to see more. I loved what Glitch Productions was doing as an indie company, and I wanted to support them as much as I could. Then episode 2 came out, and while I liked it, I wasn't impressed. It didn't feel like there was enough meat on the bones of the episode like there was for episode 1, and I was just going to drop it and move on. Then the pilot started to quickly become the most watched indie pilot on YouTube, and it started getting tons of stores in other countries, and it started to get picked up by big streaming services, and it kept receiving endless praise from all corners of the internet, and I was confused but intrigued. I didn't know what people saw, but I was determined to find it. Everyone and their mother was saying the show was the best thing since sliced bread, and I wanted to find out why. I thought I had just missed something everyone else had seen, and I wanted to figure out what it was. So I kept watching and watching, determined to search for what other people saw on this show. But every single time I finished an episode, I just thought, this is nice, but why do people like this show again? Like, sure, the animation was good and the character voice acting was really nice, but I thought the writing, aka the most important part, was its weakest link. It felt meh at best and ugh at worst. But I didn't want to be one of those people who expected a show to be one way and got mad when it didn't align with my expectations. I realized the show was a slice of life early on and I had to treat it like one, so I figured the problem was with me and I kept on watching. But trying to see it as a slice of life character focused show didn't help either when all of the focus was just on one character. The development the other characters did get was so small I hesitate to call it development. But I wanted to keep trying. I didn't want to accept the idea that this show, with an unbelievably huge fan base and so popular it got stores in multiple countries and was on multiple streaming services with rumors of being in theaters at one point, was just badly written. No, that was just ridiculous. So I kept going. And starting from episode 6 to 8, I felt like I had been rewarded for my patience because I got exactly what I was looking for. An actual plot to latch onto, proper focus on the other characters, some payoff for the setup all the way back when, and when I rewatched the show with a new outlook, I felt myself reconnecting with the characters even more than I ever did on my first viewing. With episode 9, I felt like I could see the epic conclusion I've been waiting for, something I finally connected with. I finally saw what other people saw in the show, and I was delighted to see how it all ended. Then I saw it. And it was the most bland, cookie-cutter ending in the entire world I could have expected from this show. It was like all the love and connection I had grown for this show immediately died. I tried so hard to connect with this show and see what other people see, and I couldn't for the longest time. And then I could, and I loved it. I felt connected with this incredibly large fandom that had gotten so big and left a huge impact on the indie scene that Glitch Productions could get this movie into actual theaters all around the globe. And the ending killed every single piece of that love with how much it disappointed me. I feel like all I got was unsatisfying answers to questions that went nowhere, and one of the worst examples of a character-focused show I've ever seen. I really did try with this show multiple times. By the time this video comes out, I'll have seen it at least 3 times. I tried to connect with it every time a new episode came out, but this ending just cemented all of my feelings about this show. I just don't like the Amazing Digital Circus, and I probably never will. But that doesn't extend to Gooseworx. Despite everything I said in this video, none of my ire for the show extends to Gooseworx. I hold nothing against Gooseworx, or Glitch Productions for that matter, over this show. Why? Do I really need to explain why? Because it's immature as hell to hate a person because of their work. Just because I don't think highly of Gooseworx's writing doesn't mean I think she needs to be burned alive for it. Nor do I think Glitch Productions should have reined her in or kept her in line for any corporate shells typing in the comments. Gooseworx didn't need that either. I genuinely think that Gooseworx just needed another writer on her team or an editor overlooking her scripts and ideas for this show and helping refine them. I know Glitch Productions is all about creative freedom, and I would much prefer a flawed show where Gooseworx gets her creative freedom over a good show where she didn't. However, I feel like having an extra voice to give input on what could work better, or at the very least, point out inconsistencies in the plot and writing, will be super helpful. I know I definitely find it useful. And like I said in the disclaimer at the beginning of the video, everything I said are my own thoughts and opinions on this show, and at the end of the day, Gooseworx knows more about it than I ever will. I'm not the one who made a show that ended up in theaters all around the globe and made millions of dollars at the box office, so if she thinks she didn't need another writer, then maybe she didn't. I can't claim to know more than her. I'm just a random internet nerd with a microphone. All I can do is give suggestions of what I think could have been done better and rant a little bit. But no matter what I think of this show, it doesn't change the fact that what Gooseworx created is an incredible accomplishment for independent animation. She made possibly one of the most popular indie shows of the modern day and got it into multiple theaters in several countries around the world. That is huge and cannot and should not be understated. Gooseworx should rightly feel proud of herself for getting such a huge show out there, not just out on the internet, but in major theaters all across the globe. Hopefully this makes a huge impact in the mainstream because we need new and interesting stuff like the Amazing Digital Circus in the cultural landscape today. No matter how much I dislike a show, I will never disrespect the accomplishments the creators of it managed to achieve. Gooseworx managed to create something that brought millions of people together and made tidal waves in the indie scene. I genuinely think she'll go down in independent animation history as one of the most important creators of all time. And considering what she's accomplished with this show, she deserves that title 110%. This show makes me think that I can do the exact thing she can, making a show with my own characters and just putting it out there for people to see, as long as I can put my mind to it and try my hardest. I might not like Gooseworx's writing, but she's so inspiring to me in the way that I know I can get to her position if I try my hardest, and that's all I need to do in order to achieve my own definition of success. So, even though I don't like the Amazing Digital Circus, it has taught me a very important lesson. A very corny one, but important nonetheless. As long as I put my mind to it, I can do anything. And hey, the show can't be that bad if it reminded me of something that important. Thank you so much for watching, guys. It means so much if you made it all the way to the end of this video. And if you did make it all the way here, why not subscribe and possibly ring the bell? This was a lot of fun to write and put together, and I'd love to make even more videos like this in the future. Subscribing will be a huge help, and it really means a lot. Until next time, everyone.